And, we're back, man. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C Show. Glad you could join us. And speaking of joining us, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's at Talkin Boxing, TalkinBoxing. And in case you forgot, don't forget to buy my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet. I'm not going to keep bugging you guys. Or let me rephrase that. I am going to keep bugging you guys until each person has at least a half a dozen of these books in your house. Don't be getting them from the library. I want you to get a copy. You can get a copy of the Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet by visiting Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com right now. And if you're looking for a signed copy, just go up to the book club section up on BillyCBoxing.com. Now, joining me right now, Boxing Hall of Famer. He's the New Jersey Boxing Commissioner, my man, Larry Hazzard. What's up, Larry?
Hey, Billy. How you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Russian fighter, the famous Russian fighter. Roy Jones Jr. He's calling himself a Russian citizen. I can't believe it. I don't know what's happened. But one thing is serious. All seriousness. He's talking about fighting Enzo Maccarinelli, and Maccarinelli is scheduled to fight in a couple of weeks for a Euro belt. And, I got to be honest, with all the opponents that Roy's been fighting lately, I kind of like this fight. I think that it gives us a gauge on really where Roy is. Not that Enzo Maccarinelli is at the level he used to be at, 5-8 years ago, but I think it would be a lot bigger of a test for him than some of the slugs he's been in the ring with. Have you had a chance to give that fight any thought?
Well, I was reading where where Roy is signing to fight this guy. And like you, I'm thinking that this does represent a little bit of a step up from some of those guys that he's been fighting. And, of course, Roy is on a goodwill mission, what it seems also, that he's going to bring the Russians and the Americans together.
That's what he says. That's great.
That's a great thing for him.
That is a great thing, and I really hope that it works out because I know that people have been trying to do that since the 50s. So
or earlier,
right? That we know of since the 50s, right? And if Roy can make it all happen, God bless him. I think that would be a notch in boxing's belt for sure. I just can't help but think that he's going to be, my good friend Putin, and next thing you know, wait, what's this gun? What's these fatigues? What do you mean I got to go to the Russian front? Well, you're a citizen now. That's what they all do. So I'm waiting for that.
All things are possible.
That's right. All
things are possible.
I tell you something, Larry. Some things, and I know we've talked about it many times, but what bothers me a lot, and we've been talking about it on the show in drips and drabs, and different things bring it up, and basically here's what's happened. And I know that every time I get you on the line, I'm always talking about back in the day and stuff because I know that you can relate to me with that stuff and have a good comparison. But it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, years ago and for really all the way up until just recently, at least as far as I can recall, the way a fighter would start out his career is, assuming he starts out with an amateur career, then he turns pro, he fights, he moves up a little bit, he becomes a prospect. Once he's a prospect, if things are still going good and he's improving, he cracks the contender title. He becomes a top 20 and moves on up into the top 10, and then ultimately, gets a world title shot. And normally, when you went through that path, once a prospect became a contender, the natural progression would be for him to fight other contenders in order to move up. If he's ranked at number 15, maybe he fights a 12 guy or an 8 guy, and next thing you know, he's ranked at number 10, and so on and so forth. Well, what seems to have happened, I'm not really sure when it happened, but it's definitely happening in full force today, is you got that same scenario. You got a fighter that goes in the amateurs, he turns pro, he becomes labeled a prospect, and then all of a sudden, he still fights that prospect level opponent. He becomes a contender, and next thing you know, he's fighting an elimination fight for a world title. It's like those contender versus contender fights have become non-existent. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, a number of things. First off, we always talk about the way it used to be because that's our frame of reference. That the way it used to be is what made the sport of boxing the great sport that it is. And what you're saying is very true. What has happened is that the sport has become, I guess, so much commercialized to a degree, and the standard, the rite of passage has changed drastically. The standard has been lowered, the bar has been lowered so tremendously that the level of acceptance, the standard and the level of acceptance has just been so diminished that it has changed the whole sport in and of itself. And like you said, no longer do we see the prospect go through the stages of development, which had in the past was virtually the rite of passage up through the ranks, through the level of contender, and then becoming a champion through that whole series of steps of development. That has been sort of eradicated. So now it's the quick move through and right to the big money, right to the, and it has diminished the sport. It has taken away from the sport drastically, and that's what the old timers, the old fight fans, and the old guys like you and I, when I say old, not so much chronologically, but old in the sport, this is what we clamor for, because this is what we are used to. This is what we know to have been, to have made the sport great. And so we still hunger for that, and the sport has changed so much that, that's why we find ourselves talking about the old days and the way it used to be and making these comparisons to the old fighters, because this is what we want for the sport again. And it's just, I don't know if it'll ever get back to that, because the standard has been, the level of acceptance. People just, the fans, it's a new breed with a lower standard. And guys like you and I, we're the old dinosaurs, and we are yet to accept that. So I don't know if it'll ever change, Billy.
Well, here's what you got, right? This weekend there's a fight. It's a heavyweight fight. We're talking about a heavyweight title fight even, right?
Yes.
And what I'm noticing, especially this last week leading up to it, is they're promoting this fight. Obviously, I'm talking about the Deontay Wilder and Johann Duhaupas fight.
Right.
First wave of promotion for this fight is, and by the way, as far as a live audience and stuff, that's not going to be an issue because it's in Alabama. Even though, now I'm an Alabama Crimson Tide fan, and they got their butt kicked last week. And, the state of Alabama is probably still in mourning over that. And I don't know if they can go and not watch a college football game and go support this boxing event in Alabama. But that's a whole nother story. But they're billing this as a heavyweight title fight to NBC, to primetime NBC, and it's been 30 years. And, Marv Albert called the last one, which was 30 years ago. It happened to have been Larry Holmes against Williams, and Carl the Truth Williams. And, and they're billing it as that, and that we should be happy that we're getting a title fight, right? Then the next phase of a promotion is the quotes from Wilder. Wilder's saying, it's a perfect fight for me. This guy's got a good-looking record. He's never been stopped. He comes to fight he's big, he's this, he weighs more than me, all these things, and I'm saying to myself, these are all the same exact reasons that I'm calling this guy a fraud, because number one, he's bigger than this guy Duhaupas. He's 2 or 3 inches bigger. Duhaupas has never fought anybody. Yes, he's won all these fights, but he's never fought any. The only 2 fighters on his whole resume that we even know who they are, he lost to. He lost to those 2 guys, you know. So, I mean, it's almost like he doesn't even know that all of the and he says, oh, this is a perfect opponent for me. Yeah, it's a perfect opponent for him to beat, but he's pounding his chest as a champion. Champion should at least fight a guy that's in the top 10, don't you think?
Absolutely. And what was the key thing you said? You know, he's got a great record or this and that. Records, you know, there was a fighter several years ago out of Newark, New Jersey. This kid named Farouk Salim, Butch Lewis was his manager. This guy had fought, I think he had a record of something like 40-0 or something to that degree. I mean, a phenomenal record. Every one of the fighters that he had fought was nothing but bombs. Every fighter. And then he finally fought a guy that had a mediocre record. I mean, not even, when I say mediocre, but the guy had a few tough wins on his record. And he knocked him out. Okay? He knocked him out. And these were heavyweights. And you see, these fake records and these, this propaganda that they try to push off on the fans, especially those fans that don't really know, young fans that have not lived through that era of great fighters where, you know, we were used to great fighters who had losses on their record, but were legitimate contenders, what we call it gatekeepers. Guys had to get past these guys to really prove that they were worthy of being either a champion or a contender. Deontay Wilder, you have to understand, although I think that he is a good heavyweight fighter, I think he's talented. I have even picked him to be the guy to beat Klitschko because he has some good basic skills. And he has a good trainer, Mark Breland, who's teaching him. He's learning. But for him to have a mindset that he's fighting tomorrow a worthy challenger is ludicrous. Okay? I mean, not tomorrow, but this weekend. It's ludicrous. And he should know better.
But that's the sad part. That's the sad part. I mean, and like you know, I happen to like him. I think he's a nice guy. I know he works hard. He's always in shape.
Yes.
He's got a lot of reasons to it. He does it for his kids. You know, but you know what, Larry? You know, the truth of the matter is we were all, you know, would like, oh wow, after the job Breland did and after the performance that Wilder had against Stavern, we all anointed him as being, yeah, this guy's the real deal. He might do it.
Yes.
But then when the smoke cleared, and we realized, at least my thoughts is, number one, I realized a few things. Number one, he's never looked like that since then. He's had what, 2 fights since then. He looked like he regressed. He struggled, or 1 fight actually. He struggled against Eric Molina. Then the truth of the matter is, you know, we gave him all this credit for Stavern, and realistically, how good is Stavern? You know, I mean, Stavern had only one good fight, one good fighter, I should say, on his, and he beat him twice. So he actually had 2 wins against the same guy. You know, so I mean, I wanted to see more of Wilder. I wanted to see him show me more. Show me what you did against Stavern again, and he failed to do it against a guy that they pulled out of the hat. You know, a magician pulls rabbits out of the hat, and Eric Molina was the guy that was like getting pulled out of a hat, and Duhaupas is the same kind of opponent, and yet Deontay Wilder is saying that, you know, guys like Klitschko got to come to him, that he's the man, and all of this, and I it makes him look foolish. Then he comes out and says, I'm only going to fight 3 more times, then I'm going to retire. You know, and I'm saying, what's he? You know, how is this guy? You know, my legacy's intact. You know, what do you mean? What legacy? You know, and I don't get it. Then you see something that puts it in crystal, it makes it crystal clear. Added this, not even talking about the division anymore, but Artur Beterbiev is a guy that everybody loves, right? This is a tough guy. He's one of those overseas fighters, had an extensive amateur career. He comes here, he looks great. And Sullivan Barrera, another up-and-coming fighter who looks good and stuff. It was announced today that these two guys are going to fight each other, and the winner is going to fight Kovalev for the light heavyweight title. Now, at first you say to yourself, "Oh, that's good," but then this goes right back to what I said, Larry. Barrera, Beterbiev is, you put an asterisk next to him because of all of the international fights he's had, but Barrera was on his way up, and he was that guy that was fighting prospects when he moved into contender series and not fighting other contenders. Now all of a sudden he fights a Beterbiev. Should he come out on the losing end, what are people going to say? Oh, he was exposed. The guy, is it really his fault? Isn't the trainers and the management and the promoters, aren't they overprotecting these guys, Larry?
Yes. And now you're taking the words out of my mouth. I was going to wait for you to finish. I was going to say that, Billy, it's not all the fighters' fault that they live in this unreal world. The trainers, the managers, the promoters, they have to shoulder some of this responsibility because they fail to keep a realistic picture before these fighters. And I'm surprised a little bit at Deontay, the way he's talking, because I have the highest respect for Mark Breland, a guy who really came through and earned his stripes. And I would look for Mark to be saying to this guy, "Oh, hold on." You know what I mean? Don't get ahead of yourself. All right? See, because these are the guys that have to keep things in perspective. Keep these guys from reading these press clippings and believing this bull crap. And that's where, a lot of this responsibility has to fall. And that's where they have failed in what, in their duties and responsibilities. See, because these fighters young, coming up, and they go in, and they get all these wins, and they really think that they're that talented, that, they're knocking these guys out, and, they're coming away with these easy victories. They somehow convince themselves that they're great, that they're really, and they haven't begun to even learn how to fight yet.
I know.
And that's where I think the trainers, the managers, have to be truthful with these guys and tell them, "Hey, look, this is all part of the business. We're putting guys in front of you, and you're still learning different styles, different techniques. So don't get ahead of yourself." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I really think that that's where the responsibility, a lot of this responsibility, falls on these managers and especially these trainers.
Well, we know the trainers, half of these guys don't even know how to put the gloves on, the fighters, so, they're just as bad, it's like the management, they're just, here we are in this day and age, we're trying to, we try to look out for the fighters more, with safety and we teach our referees to, not let a fight go too far. It's better to stop the fight sooner than later, blah, blah, blah. And what do we got? We're almost counterproductive because you got trainers that don't know anything about boxing. They're in the ear of these guys, making them think that they're King Kong, and they're pounding on their chest after they beat up the Pillsbury Doughboy, and they're ready to take on everybody, and it's pretty sad. Let me move to something that is a feel-good rather than us keep getting depressed. Triple G and David Lemieux are fighting October 17th at Madison Square Garden. They announced the card is pretty good, except I'm not too crazy about the Luis Ortiz heavyweight fight. That's similar to what we're talking about. Here's a guy that's actually fighting for an interim title, and he's fighting a guy that's nowhere near the ranking, although ironically enough, he's ranked higher than Duhaupas, the guy that's fighting Deontay. He's ranked higher than the guy fighting Deontay. But anyway, do you think, and I've been saying this, You know, in lieu of what's taken place with the Mayweather-Berto fight and how bad the numbers are released, that they're giving us a range, and even the high end of the range is well below what they had anticipated, and all of this stuff, and all the negativity that surrounded that fight, which actually goes back as a result of the poor anticlimactic fight between Pacquiao and Mayweather. Do you think that the Triple G David Lemieux fight, which we all know is going to be an exciting fight, regardless of who wins, we know it's going to be an exciting fight, and we know that the fans are going to show up. Triple G and Lemieux both have a large fan base. Do you think that this fight, Larry, if it lives up to the hype that we're all expecting, which is an action-packed rock'em sock'em fight, do you think that this could change the tide of the sport in a sense where we can get these fans back, where we finally look at a pay-per-view? And don't forget, right after that, we got Klitschko Fury. Then right after that, we got Cotto Canelo. You know, potentially 3 big fights that could get these fans in a position to really kick off 2016. What do you think about the ramifications of a exciting Triple G David Lemieux fight?
Well, I think it has the potential. I think it has the potential. But you know what's happening too, Billy? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I think is happening also is that with a lot of this PBC, a lot of these fights that we're seeing some, regardless of the success of the series, we are seeing some pretty good fights. You know, I've been really entertained with some of these fights that I've been seeing on free television. And what's happening is you're kind of getting kind of a competitive effect here where a lot of the fans are probably beginning to say, hey, look, you know, I'm satisfied with some of the stuff that I'm seeing for free. You know, I don't have to pay for this. I'll just wait for the replay. You know what I mean? But I do believe that this fight does have the potential to really add another measure of excitement to the sport. I see the sport, you know, I see boxing with guys like Triple G, Lemieux, and some of these other up-and-coming fighters, these exciting fighters who are fighting legitimate contenders. I see them as being the new wave of boxing for the future. And if it keeps going the way that it's going, I think it's going to be successful. So, yes, I do think that this fight does have the potential of turning the page for us in boxing.
You know, I mean, at the end of the day, boxing's entertainment, you know, and whether people like the form of entertainment that it is or not, that's, you know, neither here nor there. But the bottom line is it's entertainment. And you could tell me, you know, until, you know, your face turns red that, you know, Floyd Mayweather demonstrates the sweet science. And I'll tell you that, you know, I don't agree, you know, and some of the people will always say that. Oh, well, that you don't know boxing if you don't watch a Mayweather fight and think it's exciting. No, it's not exciting. You know, is it technically sound? Does it show how talented that man is? Yes, it does. But
I don't. Yeah. But you know what, Billy, and I have to agree with you at least 95% of that. Okay, in that, does he demonstrate the sweet science? Not completely.
Right.
See, that's what I say. Not completely. He does demonstrate some of the sweet science to a great degree. Defense, you know, ring movement, positioning, strategy. But the one critical aspect is that he doesn't finish guys off. See, that is the exclamation to the sweet science. Think back to all of the great fighters. Here we go again. Think about all the guys, going all the way back to guys like Henry Armstrong, Graziano, some Willie Pep, Sandy Sadler, even some of the lower weights, and then of course the great one, Sugar Ray Robinson. You know, you saw the epitome of the sweet science, the movement, the boxing, the defense. But what was the thing that made them most exciting? They knew how to finish fights.
Yep.
They knock guys out. You know, they break a fighter down. They show you all the aspects They would show you the complete package. Think about all it. Hey, let's bring it even closer to the modern era. My guy, Sugar Ray Leonard. To me, Sugar Ray Leonard was the sweetest, man. You know what I mean? Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran. I mean, you know who it is.
Yeah,
you know the guys. Tommy Hearns. You know, I can just go on and on and on. Here we go again. Here we go talking about the past. But that's what it is. These guys demonstrated the sweet science in its completeness. Because what? They would break a guy down. They show you defense. They show you offense. They show you movement. They show you strategy. And then what they do? They finish the opponent.
Right.
Floyd doesn't do that.
No, because Floyd
does not do that.
He doesn't engage. His motto is safety first. I mean, you talk about Leonard. You know, Leonard. Everybody thinks Leonard was a Mayweather style fighter, but Leonard, he had a vicious part of him too. And that's I mean, that's what I learned to like about Leonard, and that's what gets me to that question with the Triple G Lemieux, because I think that this fight, for any fan, except the diehard Floyd fans that are blind and they only like Floyd. Because remember, there's a lot of those guys out there that have just drank the Kool-Aid, and to them, there's nobody else other than Floyd. You can't convince them. You can't, you know what I mean? I mean, it's a lost cause. So maybe we even lose those guys, because those guys might not follow the sport anymore. But all those other ones that are on the cusp, or maybe the fight fan that's been away from the sport for a little while because, it wasn't exciting enough for them. This is the kind of fight that can bring them back, and then follow it with a Canelo Cotto fight, which we know is going to be good. Yeah. I mean, and then you end the year. And then I could see everybody going, whoa, wow, 2016, man, what are we going to kick off 2016 with? I mean, as it unfolded, and you're right, as much as I'm critical of the PBC with 90% of their showcase fights, which are not competitive, that other 10% kind of make up for it because they were super fights. I mean, we had we had a couple of really good ones. The one that sticks out, of course, is the Leo Santa Cruz Abner Maris fight. I mean, that fight was good on paper, and it lived up to the billing. So I think we have a good few. I think 2016 is actually going to be a decent year for us. But I really think that the Triple G Lemieux, and then, of course, the Fury Klitschko, and then ending the year pretty much with Canelo Cotto, I really think that that's going to be a solid foundation to keep us going strong for 2016.
I agree.
And don't forget, we got Terrence Crawford fighting. I mean, we both love him.
Terrence Crawford, man.
He's fighting, and he's a guy that's real good, and to me he's more of a definition of the sweet science, because yes, he's got hand speed, he's got movement, but he's not afraid to engage. He'll beat
these guys. They engage and they finish the opponent, man.
Yep.
The sweet science is a brutal science. It is what it is.
Yep.
Come on.
No, listen.
I make no excuses.
You said it right. You said it's sweet science. They display defense. They don't get hit. They go in. They break their opponent down. That's the key. They break the opponent down. You weaken them. It's like chopping a tree down. You work on the trunk a little bit, and then all of a sudden, down goes the tree. And that's exactly what a good fighter, in my opinion, what a good fighter should do. Now, there are cases where you try your hardest, you break the guy down, you beat the hell out of him for 12 rounds, and he's still standing. That's when you tip your hat. But you still went in for that kill. You didn't get complacent and figure that hey, I might as well get on my bicycle. And a lot of people may disagree with me, but I thought that Arturo Gatti was a guy that really displayed the sweet science in many ways, more than Floyd Mayweather. Okay. Well, excuse me. Arturo Gatti wasn't his middle name New Jersey? I mean, because he fought in Jersey. I mean, the first time I met him actually was actually it might have been the first time I ever met you. I had one of my fighters on. I think it was when you introduced the IDs, when you made everybody take pictures at the weigh-ins.
Yes.
And
walk home.
Yeah, and Gotti wasn't fighting on the card, but he was there, and
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, the fanfare. I mean, everybody, the whole event just stopped, and everybody went and wanted to hang out with him. And you're right, to a degree. The sweet science, a guy that just kept coming, and I mean, it's hard it's hard to say that he was anything but a warrior, because he really didn't. You threw a punch, you didn't miss, Gotti. I mean, you landed, but you could never count that guy out, huh? I mean, and when they were talking about him, should he get in the Hall of Fame and everything, my opinion was yes, and the reason why was because I feel that in addition to talent and how you judge any athlete of their field of play, is at the end of their career, did they make an impact on the sport? And I feel that Arturo Gatti certainly made an impact on boxing.
Certainly made an impact on boxing.
And he deserved it.
I agree. And there are a lot of other guys who hopefully one day they'll get in because of the impact that they made on the sport, of a similar fashion.
Exactly. And hopefully that'll be. But, Larry, I appreciate your insight. We won't be doing a live show Thursday, so we'll miss you next week, but we'll be back the following week. I'll drop you an email because I want to test the other line when we get a chance, because I'm still having trouble with that. That's why I called you on this one. So
we got to test it, because I'm not, I'll be doing a weigh-in tomorrow. So I'm here home waiting for the other phone to ring.
Yeah, and it keeps...
It's ringing for everybody else.
It picks up, and then it disconnects me real quick. So
really?
Yeah, so one day we'll test it, and, when we're off the air. So I'll reach out, and we'll do that one night. But anyway, Larry, I appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to you next time, my man.
Okay, Billy. My pleasure as always.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay.
That's Boxing Hall of Famer Larry Hazzard giving his thoughts. And, hey, you know what? 99.9% of the time, Larry and I are on the same page. And, interesting his point about Arturo Gatti being the sweet science. And it's true, because Arturo Gatti gave it his all. He represented boxing the way you wished every fighter did, took pride in winning. You have to, shoot the guy. It's probably a bad analogy with him, but you had to shoot him practically to stop him. He would never give up. Somebody else had to save him from himself. And, so often today, I know in other sports they have the tap out and everything, but boxing, if you quit on your stool, you're labeled a quitter, and you need people around you to stop it. And Arturo Gatti certainly had those people, because he would never quit a fight. That's for sure. Not Arturo Gatti. Hey, listen, I'm going to